It is 8:41. Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards along with David Bastl. And as always, when we want something interesting, we go to Chris from the Idea Shop. That's why it's called the Idea Shop. And we've had so many great books, and even better when we get a chance to speak to the authors, which we will in just a second. But we say good morning, Chris. Thank you so much for, again, entertaining us and having great ideas. I'll be honest, for Christmas, because this, as you'll hear, will be a fantastic, for Canadians, this is a piece of history. It's the way it's documented, and the passion put into the book is unmatched.
Spectacular. Thanks so much, Mike. I'm thrilled. One of the greatest Canadian history books that I've read in a really long time came my way. It's a book called On Cold Iron. It is a history of the 1907 Quebec Bridge collapse, but actually so much more. And we talk about ideas. Not only is this a great gift idea for the engineer in your family, on your gift list, anyone who's interested in technology or even Canadian history, but this author had an idea over 30 years ago. Something popped into his head and would not let go. And when he got the time and he got everything together, he crafted this extraordinary book. And I'm thrilled to have with us today the author of On Cold Iron, Dan Levert. He was obligated as an engineer in 1978. He was the president and CEO of the Canadian Council of Professional Engineers. He's also a lawyer. And now, with that spectacular resume, he can actually add author to the list. And so please welcome, all the way from St. John's, Newfoundland, the author of On Cold Iron, Dan Levert. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Yes?
I have to say that according to my wife, I'm not an author until I write 3 books. So I'm on my way.
No. Yeah. They always have something to say, don't they, Dan? Sorry. Just getting in trouble right off the top. Speaking of getting into trouble, you should know a little bit about me, Dan, and that is, certainly in social situations, if it's a dinner party or in a bar, I'm what they call a liar. And there's a lot of things that I would certainly lie about. I've said that I was a doctor. There's many professions that I've said. I think I've also said I'm a lawyer. What easier thing to do than just to fabricate things and say I'm a lawyer? The one thing I've never done is said that I was an engineer, because you have to be smart to be an engineer, my friend. And the one thing I don't even attempt is to tell a girl or a group of people that, yes, I went to Queens or whatever, and I'm an engineer, because let me tell you, it is so exacting. That's why this book, and sometimes when I look at catastrophes, when there's something catastrophic that happens in the physical world of how things are built, it's frightening, because generally our assumption is, as lay people, is people don't really make mistakes. That it's inconceivable to think of this almost exact science on what they do, what these people have studied, that we actually, regardless of the time period, that we would make these kinds of mistakes.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the book tells 2 stories. The first story it tells is about the Iron Ring ceremony that is uniquely Canadian. As you know, Canadian engineers wear an iron ring on the small finger of their working hand to remind them that they can make mistakes. And the whole idea for the iron ring came from none other than Rudyard Kipling in 1923. And how that all came about was really quite fascinating. It started with the University of Toronto professor writing to Kipling in 1923 and telling him that we were a tribe of engineers without a soul, and we needed his help to develop an oath or a creed that we could all ascribe to form this tribal spirit. So it started with Kipling and Professor Haltain.
Wow. So, okay, so that's one side of the story. Please do go on.
Well, there's a myth. When I was obligated in 1978, when I got my iron ring, there was a myth that the original rings back in 1925 came from steel from the wreckage of the collapsed bridge of 1907, the Quebec Bridge.
Wow.
And I always wondered about that. And it wasn't until 1985, when I was in second year law school, that I picked up a copy of the transcript of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the collapse of the Quebec Bridge. And it was there that I saw this unbelievable story as to what had happened and how these arrogant engineers from New York and Pennsylvania refused to believe that their design was flawed. And so the great lesson of that bridge disaster, which killed 76 men, was the lesson of humility. And Rudyard Kipling's lesson to the engineer in giving us this iron ring and its ceremony is one of humility. So those two tied the stories together. And I thought, if I could tell this in a factual, compelling way, it would serve to remind engineers of the obligation that we all took when we received our rings.
Well, Dan, obviously it had the kind of weight that was on your mind for decades before this actually becomes a book. I mean, that almost is an obsession, because when you start thinking about that kind of time frame, this never really left your soul. This has been with you for a long time.
You know, I think Chris described it best when he said to me that, you know, clearly this book was burning a hole in your head. And he was absolutely right. It was something that I always felt I had to do. And it wasn't until I retired in 2015 that I undertook to write it, and started off my research at the University of Toronto Archives. And those people were fantastic in the help they gave me to research the story behind the iron ring.
And
Dan,
Dan,
go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that makes Dan's book so interesting, David, is that bridges are not something that interests me particularly. I'm kind of terrified by them. Engineering, I don't even pretend to be an engineer, but this book is so compelling. I forgot I was reading a true story. I forgot I was reading a book about engineering. Dan's research and obviously the documentation you put together. The book has some spectacular photographs, including the photograph of the bridge taken the day before the collapse, as well as a photo of possibly the piece that brought the bridge down. I mean, it's incredibly documented, but I am there in that book following. I'm on the bridge, I'm in the courtroom. The writing is superb. So I would tell your wife, perhaps one book is absolutely fine to consider yourself an author. I've read thousands and thousands of books, and this is one of the best. I'm just wondering, how did you get yourself, to write it in such a fashion that puts the reader in there? It's like reading a whodunit or a thriller. How did you do that?
You know, that was the most difficult part. It was easy just to recount the facts, but in order to do this, I challenged myself that it had to be compelling. It had to reflect the events. I mean, there was so much drama. The day of the disaster, they're firing off telegrams from New York to Quebec City. There's a young engineer rushing by train to New York. There's a last-minute meeting, and as the meeting breaks up at 5:30, the bridge collapses. It's unbelievable, the drama that was involved here. And so if I felt I had to tell it in a way that brought the reader into the situation. And I hope I did that.
Yeah, I think mission accomplished. Dan, take us through some of this research, because you talked about finally working on it in 2015 and putting your soul into it, as it shows in this book. Were you expecting this to be as difficult as it seems to be, to get it straight and get it right? Yes,
absolutely. However, once I started getting into it and actually writing some of the chapters, when you get to the week of the disaster, I have a chapter for every day. And then I have a chapter solely committed to describing, there were 11 survivors from the collapse. And each one of them told the commission what they went through for the 15 seconds that it took for the bridge to fall. And that is a chapter in itself. And so I was able to sort of isolate the incidents and the days in such a way that you're sort of led along to this ultimate disaster. And it was difficult, but very, very satisfying once I was able to get where I thought I should be.
Well, the one thing that I think is common for a lot of people, and humans in general, no matter where you are in the world, is there is a fascination about bridges. It's one of the probably original things that we built in humankind that still exists today. And yet most of us look at a bridge and go, how the hell did they, it's in water and it doesn't sink? Like, I don't understand. Like, you start going through all these things, and the bridges that you sometimes pass a lot as a kid going to Hamilton we were over Burlington Bay, every couple of months, and there we are on the Skyway Bridge. There are lift bridges. There are different kinds of bridges, and then crossing something like the, I guess it's the Blue Water Bridge. I think when you go from Sarnia into Port Huron, it's just a phenomenal bridge. And then I went through the Queensboro Bridge in New York a couple of months ago, and you look at it and you realize some of them, like the ones in New York, how different would they be from the actual construction when they went up? It is almost ancient in my mind, and yet the understanding of the physics in making a bridge is still something I think that captures everyone's imagination.
Yeah, the engineering involved with this particular bridge, it was going to be the longest span bridge of any kind in the world. And it was the longest cantilever bridge. It still is the Quebec bridge that stands today, the second bridge that replaced the original one that collapsed, is still the longest cantilever bridge in the world. But the cantilever bridges are no longer in vogue. Today, it's cable stay bridges and suspension bridges. You can get longer spans with less material. It's more sophisticated engineering, but really bridges are sort of the symbol of engineering dating back to, when man started to move around and want to get his cart and his horse over a body of water. So it's a true symbol of engineering.
And Dan, on your website, on coldiron.ca, which is actually where you can find out how to purchase the book. It's also available on Amazon.ca and Indigo.ca. But on your website, you've got some terrific images of this bridge in semi-states of construction. And to what Mike said, you might drive over a bridge and you might momentarily give it some thought, but when you see these bridges under construction, particularly this Quebec bridge, there's shots of it. They were working on it for 2 years before it fell. It's quite far along. It is shocking to me that this could come down. It really disrupts your faith in the world as it should be. Seeing this bridge just photographed the day before it came down is amazing. And I think that it stands as a great testimony to the work that gets done, that this process takes years and years and years. It was 20 years until the replacement bridge, I believe, was finished that stands today.
Actually, it was in 1917 that the second bridge was completed. It took them 2 years to clear the debris from the first bridge, and that was only on the shore part. The rest of the bridge is sitting at the bottom of the St. Lawrence in 200 feet of water, still there.
Wow. Dan, I know we're running out of time, and it's good that Chris got that website in there, because I was just going to ask you about that. But now that we've kind of given our audience a sneak peek at what Christmas should look like for gift giving, which is tremendous, and I can't recommend this anymore. And you went through the process of writing this, researching this, presenting it, and you're still in that glow of that. Have you given yourself an opportunity to think about, I want to do this process again with a different project or anything like that? Or are you, because I know we kind of joked about it at the start saying, oh, we want to get a couple more books out and so forth, but it is tough writing something this magical. And I'm just wondering, have you given yourself another opportunity to think, yeah, I'd like to give it another stab at something else?
Absolutely. I realize now how much I enjoyed writing this book. I loved it. I love the writing part so much. And so, yes, I have another project in mind. And on the issue of a gift, Mike, you said something last week during your radio show when you were talking about 2 books, Star Wars Cookbook and The Christmas Pig. And it struck me, and I wrote it down. Mike said, the essence of what a gift is, reading is that.
Yeah.
So I hope people buy my book for their engineer father, uncle, boyfriend, husband. It's a great gift.
Oh, it is. I'm looking forward to actually giving it. My brother, I know, is going to want to see this, as it is a real part of Canadian history. And I also have done my research, because I know people are often afraid of bridges. And the research that I have done told me that there's really only 2 things a bridge needs to be afraid of. And that, of course, is Godzilla or King Kong. But beyond that, because they really seem to not like bridges, as far as I've seen a lot of the movies, they're very angry towards the bridges. But aside from that, can't we say that bridges, for the most part, are probably pretty safe?
Yes, I think they're fun.
Gentlemen, thank you so much, Dan. What a treat. And thank
Pleasure.
you for the signed book that I have. I'll tell you, that meant so much to me. I was like, oh boy, this is fantastic, which means my family can't steal it. Don't. There's a name in there.
Has
So
my name on it.
No, let
honest,
them
you
steal
can't
it
do
and buy
that.
another one.
That's right. That's exactly right. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Dan. Fantastic book. And Chris, wonderful time as always. Always great ideas. Thus called the Idea Shop. Thank you so much this morning, gentlemen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Great stuff here this morning. Dan Levert, again, on Cold Iron. We will certainly make sure you will see this today on Twitter as well, and where you can get that book for Christmas.